Today is the first day of this April 1984 7-day retreat. Before reading and commenting on a koan, there are a few things I'd like to say. One thing I forgot last night: people often ask, what's the meaning of Toni walking through the zendo, through the sitting room? Wondering whether what is happening is a checking of postures, an evaluating of the sitter's energy of whatever. It's none of the kind. It's good to take a break from sitting in meeting room. And since there are only 7 or 8, maybe sometimes 10 people that we can see at one period, come down to at least once during the sitting period to be with you, not as a judge or checker-upper. Maybe if we could see it as a friendly visit with each one of you. Visiting with each other, meaning seeing each other without barricades, without division. Not as Toni being this and you being that. A few words about listening to a talk. Talk is not a lecture on Zen or on Zen koan or whatever subject is taken to talk about. Talk is always about ourselves. And if something is read, it is used to point out or to take off from into oneself, so that maybe in listening and attending without prejudging or comparing this teacher with that teacher, which makes listening impossible. Just listening and maybe discovering something in oneself. Not discovering something about a character that the koan deals about. It's very insignificant and irrelevant. The character is always oneself. But we like to keep it outside, because it is painful to look at oneself. Although if it really happens, and it's an enormous relief to see self-deception is an enormous relief. If one doesn't immediately go on to a new trip, I shouldn't be this way, why do I have to be this way, why, and so forth. Because if it's seen how we think and react, then in their seeing is the way out. If it's not beset with immediate evaluations and judgments and wishes to be different, then the same thing goes on. What is said or read is not meant to be words of authority. I think that follows from what has just been said. It is not meaningful unless one checks it out oneself, for oneself, within oneself, as one acts and reacts here and in one's daily life. Nothing is said for you to take over, to remember, to quote. Even though quoting is not quoting if one really understands, because words belong to no one. They're just a way of expressing something, often rather clumsily, that cannot be put into words. Some people have asked, is there some facet of authority if the only person who talks at a retreat is Toni? What does it matter who talks if what is said is probed into? To see whether it is so or not so within oneself. And then there's a time during meeting where one can bring up questions about it. And we'll start right from scratch, going into those questions, opening them up, looking at it. Some people have said here and there, I hear Toni's voice, even when she's not talking, telling me do this, do that. Whose voice is that you hear? What does one make out of what is being said? A guideline to lean on? Something to follow? Or rebel against? Can that all come into awareness so that this mind, as it dominates our actions and life, is understood? Aerated with attention and awareness. The koan today is number 11 from a collection called Mumonkan. Before me is a book by Zenkei Shibayama, Zen Comments on the Mumonkan. The title of the koan is Joshu Sees the True Nature of Two Hermits. There's a simpler version which just says Joshu sees two hermits. And the case reads, Joshua came to a hermit and asked, "Are you in? Are you in?" The hermit held up his fist. "The water is too shallow to anchor a vessel here," said Joshua, and went away. Then he came to another hermit and called out, "Are you in? Are you in?" This hermit also held up his fist. "You are free either to give or to take away, either to kill or to give life," said Joshua, bowing to him. It's the end of the case. And in the commentary, Mumon says, both held up their fists. Why did he approve the one and disapprove the other? Tell me, where is the core of the complication? If you can give a turning word on the point, you will see that Joshua is unrestrained in saying what he wants to say and utterly free either to help the one rise up or to push the other down. Be that as it may, do you know that it was Joshua, on the contrary, whose true nature was seen by the two hermits? If you say that the one hermit is superior to the other, you have not yet got the Zen eye. Or if you say there's no difference between the two, you have not yet got the Zen eye either. And the poem reads, "His eye is a shooting star, his spirit is lightning, a sword to kill, a sword to give life." Without going into the history of Joshua very much, placing him in time, he lived in the 9th century. Traveled around, visiting people like this, like in this story, for some 50 years, settled down at 80, and lived to be 125 years old. Visits of teaching, learning at those times were of this nature. Asking a question, and then the response, and maybe a further question or a further response. Testing. Not testing how good one was at responses, how clever they were, how Zen-like. This can all be learned, and is being learned frequently. The question is always, where does the question come from, and where does the answer or the response come from? And that one can observe in oneself as one lives. We'll start with this koan and comment on our daily life. This man knocking on the hut. Maybe there was no hut. Maybe he was doing his thing out in the open. Oh, being in, well, let's take a hut. Knocking. Knock, knock. Opening a door and bursting in with a question, "Are you in?" fist. And then this commentary or response by the knocker. Water here is too shallow for a big ship to anchor. Closing the door and taking off. Are you entering into this scene yourself? Maybe being that person there sitting. Someone asking the question, are you there? Are you in? Are you? Are you there? Or do you think you ought to be there? Or what does this mean anyways? Are you in? Does it mean in the house? Obviously it's in the house. What a stupid question. What does it mean to be in? To be there? So that no question will topple one over, cause confusion, or this thought of what should I answer, which comes out of confusion of what I should do and maybe may not be able to bring off. Then this is not being in. This is being ensconced in images of oneself and the other one who is seen maybe as superior, in the know. This is how we live together with each other most of the time, knowing each other from the past, from reputation, what other people have talked about this person, and already having an image before we even meet him or her. And then one is just conversant with a picture, a memory trace in the mind, in the brain. Which is projected on a real human being who is no picture, who is no memory trace. He's there, right now as he is, asking, are you in? One person this morning mentioned being still at work. Obviously one isn't still at work. One is sitting here. What is meant is thoughts about work, the problems of work, the problems of oneself, wanting to get ahead with this work or feeling one way or the other, inferior, superior, or still battling with the boss. Can one wake up to where one is at this moment, from moment to moment, and then just leave it there? Not immediately the thought, I should really be here on the mat, I shouldn't be at work. It's more out to sea. Drifting onto another track of thoughts. Do you see that? Here in the present case, this person lifts up the hand, and that's it. And in effect, what Joshua is saying, no good. It's not, what's going on here is not worth my time. How would you react if this happened to you? How does one respond when one has just done something, brought something off? Completed a job or baked some bread? And someone comes in and says, it's no good. Not worth my time to even stick around. Because nobody may be that gross. But subtle put-downs hurt just as much as gross ones, or don't they? How dependent is one on how one is evaluated by someone else, praised or blamed? Most of the time, totally. One's whole mood depends on that. Whether one is criticized lightly or severely, or praised, flattered, that makes or breaks one's day. Sometimes a week, or however long one manages to carry it around with one. In this case, it doesn't say how the monk responded. It leaves it completely open. One may interpret the koan to say it was very good for him to get from his famous master to get this comment. This means he's going to strive harder. It's always good to be put down by a Zen master. Then you really exert yourself to do better and better and better. I wonder whether the koan is about that. I doubt it. Maybe it's just to observe in oneself how one responds to put down. Is one free? Free to receive it, free to listen? Not with a shield of armor. That's not freedom, that's defense. One may develop that too. develop a thick skin so one cannot be hurt, and therefore be in the presence of criticism, learn certain response of saying, yes, you're right, I'm wrong, so that one doesn't feel the pain and hurt, which is there, or else one is so totally numb that even that cannot be felt. Or is there this freedom to listen without any shield? It's difficult. One may already tune off half of what this person is saying, not wanting to hear the end of it, for fear of pain. But if attention is there, if one observes or witnesses, words are all dualistic, this is not meant dualistically. If there's awareness of this whole process, because the person who's talking and the one who's talked to are not two, it's one process, then there's really freedom. To check on what the person said. Maybe it's so, maybe it's not so. That there's shallowness, superficial response. One can look. Or one may notice that the other person is testing or teasing. We do tease each other a lot. It's sort of a strange way of relating to each other, but very often the teaser does not really mean to hurt, just has no other way of relating with a person. It's an awkward way of making contact. And only does one find out afterwards with often dismay that one has hurt a person. Didn't mean that at all. Which means one needs to be careful in how one talks to people. But I'm getting off here. Someone says, like Joshua here, it's too shallow here for a big ship to anchor. That's a strange way of responding. Who calls oneself a big ship? There's already a clue. A real challenge. Then going to another monk's hut and going through the same thing, the same response. So it is stated here, raising up of the fist, and Joshua going through a profound praise here. Freely you give, freely you take, and bestow life and take it away, and bowing deeply. How would one feel if this happened? I don't mean in this particular form, but in a form that is not strange, that is very contemporary. Somebody really praising one for one's skills, one's capacity, and one's ways of handling things. It's almost harder to discern and not get caught up in as blame or put down. And with this one becomes exploitable. not only exploitable to someone who praises one, but also addicted to that. One wants to be in the company of that person because it feels so good, one feels so important, so right, so good. Again, taking one's moods and feelings from how other people react to one, which is our ancient conditioning, education and bringing up by praise and blame, which is used the world over by parents, by schools, and sports, by coaches, everywhere. Where is the attention when one is praised? Or does one just soak it up? Feeding the self-image and the image of the person who has praised. This goes hand in hand. Carrying the memory around. Liking to think back on that scene. You may say, well, what's wrong with getting feedback on the work one does or whatever? There's nothing wrong if it's genuine feedback, factual information, particularly if one is learning something, learning a skill, a trade. It need not be linked with put down or praise. Actually, children, sometimes little children, but before they have been addicted, as it were, to praise and scared of blame, they're quite content to put a puzzle together with anybody gushing all over it. How wonderful they are, how smart, how great. Oh, you really know how to do this now. We start something there. The completion of the thing is satisfaction in itself to the child. Or factual input does not build up images, either of the one who gives it nor of the one who receives it. And with that there remains a freedom of working together, correcting mistakes without this dismal feel of failure. One's whole life depends on not making mistakes or not being blamed at times, because one just falls apart if there's criticism, because it hooks into a whole past of being hurt, demolished. Or the other side of it. It's the beauty of this koan, putting those two sides side by side as one. As it says in the commentary, both held up their fists. Why did he approve the one, disapprove the other? Tell me, where is the complication? There needs to be no complication. One held up the fist, this was said. One held up, the other held up the fist, that was said. It's straightforward. If one deduces one was right, the other was wrong, one is in trouble. says if you can give a turning word means an insight, understanding, seeing the whole thing for what it is, without imagery, how it should be or shouldn't have been said. You will see that Joshua's unrestrained in saying what he wants to say and utterly free either to help the one rise up or push the other down. There's a dangerous way of putting it. Seems to give authority to a Zen teacher to freely put someone down and freely raise someone up. And it may happen that way. But do you see that it is a coupled system? If the monk sits there, empty, no image of himself, of what he should be doing or not be doing, he's just there. Are you in? Yeah. Could have also had said yes or done anything, not said anything. With no idea what's right and wrong, a proper answer, an improper answer, then he's invulnerable to whatever this guy at the door happens to say or not say is his problem. This is when there's stability within oneself, which does not depend on praise or blame. Then it may be quite openly revealed what the caller is up to. Either he's in a bad mood, that's often clearly revealed. You can see that. You can hear it in the tone of voice, in the looks of the person, the stridency of the voice when somebody blames somebody. Or you notice a twinkle in the eye. Just throwing out some bait. Let him throw it out. I'm not hungry. And is he rising up the other one? Who is there to be raised up? Except someone who depends on that. Starved for that. For being elevated by someone else. What a risky position. A monk could have interrupted him and said, "Cut it out. Freely you give, bestow, take away." What does it all mean? What does it mean? Does it really mean something? Who can give life? Who can take it away? Me? You? The teacher? The master? Or God? The Buddha? We may want to believe that, but that blurs and fogs up seeing what actually goes on in oneself and in the person next to us. and in the trees and under the water. Here it says, be that as it may, you know that it was Joshua, on the contrary, whose true nature was seen by the two hermits. We've gone through that. I think we can drop the word true nature. Is it necessary? Put something extra in there, which, as you think of it, is conceptual. What is the true nature in Joshua or in the hermit? Do you need that to paraphrase something? Just being completely as one is this instant, with no pretense, no defense, no hiding. No image. And responding out of that, either by saying something, doing something, or saying or doing nothing. Why put a label on that? Then it becomes something that we want to attain, see into, see through. And we're safely lodged in the conceptual world. If you say that one hermit is superior to the other, you've not yet got the Zen eye. Here's another thing to get. The Zen eye. What is it? It's very dangerous to use these words and terms. Become a carrot to dangle before one. If I could only get the Zen eye. And at that moment blindly persisting in unseen reactions of wanting, of imagining, of striving, fearing that one may be one who will never get the Zen eye. Is one hermit or one person superior to the other? What does superior mean? What does it involve to even make a statement like that? It involves comparison between people according to certain set standards, which exist conceptually but may have nothing to do with human beings. Certainly to think of oneself as superior to someone else is the epitome of division, isolation, separation, arrogance. It's an image, that's all. With powerful effect on one's behavior, and relationship. Same goes for feeling one is inferior. It's just the other side of the same coin. What am I if I have no images of myself as being anything? Is it possible? I don't know. I seem to be clutching one from one moment to the next. One goes, and where is another one? Always needing to be somebody, something. Why? Can one question this whole thing completely, radically, without knowing the answer? Not starting out saying, I'm going to become nobody, or be nobody. That's another image. What am I? Or you, or everyone? When I really don't know? I don't take refuge in pictures, memories, projections, goals. Then what am I? Or you, or everything? Commentary ends in saying, if you say there's no difference between the two, you haven't got the Zen eye either. That substitute. One doesn't understand. And obviously there are differences. I don't think there are two pieces of sand, two blades of grass, two trees, two human beings, two anything that's alike. Not even our left side is like our right side. So we're all alike in that we're all different. We all have that in common. We're all different. A real commonality in our individual differences. Differences of talents, height, fat or thin, old or young, our whole environment in which we were brought up. Dreaming a good part of the time, sometimes most of the time, all the time. And yet at times coming to, one knows not quite how, waking up to what's going on. Just because there has been an awakening in one person doesn't mean that person's going to stay awake. Just because one person is asleep, caught up, doesn't mean that that person can't wake up to what's going on and be free of it. So where's the complication? If one will not fix anything, about oneself or others, because it may be that oneself is all others in constant flux. We will end here for today.